Welcome back. In this video we're going to have a look at if statements. I'm going to break this down into 5 sections. First of all, what is an if statement? Then an example of an if statement with a string. Then what is indentation? Then using an if statement with an integer, a number, and finally having a look at the structure of if statements. In short, an if statement is a method of telling the computer what to do if a certain condition is met. So for example, if this lady clicks the button to take a selfie, then the phone will take a photo of the lady. If you're doing an exam, if you get more than 90%, then you'll get an A, more than 80 you'll get a B, more than 70 you'll get a C, and so on. Okay, so let's get coding. So I've started off by just putting 4 comments here for each section of this video, and we'll start off with an if statement and just to ask the user how are they feeling and then to respond appropriately. So I will set up a variable, I'll just call it feeling, call it anything you want, it's just a variable, and make that the input, and then I'm just going to ask the user how are you feeling today? Question. So how are you feeling today? Close brackets. Okay, I can now set up an if statement. So if, and if is a command word, feeling is the variable which will equal whatever the user typed in this sentence. So if feeling is equal to, now is equal to 2 equal signs. 2 equal signs is a comparison, so it's kind of is it equal to, whereas 1 equal sign means make it equal to. So if feeling is equal to good, then, so the colon here means then, the word then what do we want to do? For now I can just print I'm glad to hear that. Okay, I can run this program now to see if it works. How are you feeling today? Good. Glad to hear that. Great. Now, because I have a capital G here, this is case sensitive. So if I run this program again and this time do not put a capital G in, then I will get no outcome. I can solve this problem by converting the user's input to the same criteria, capitalization criteria that I'm comparing to. So for example, if I compare to all lowercase, I can then change the user's input to all lowercase by using the method dot lower. Now that changes anything the user types into lowercase, and then I'm comparing it to lowercase. If I just do a quick print here so we can see what's happening. So print feeling, and then if I run again, okay, I'm going to mix this up a bit, so a mixture of lowercase and uppercase, and you can see here that this dot lower converted the user's input to all lowercase, and that then met the criteria because I'm comparing to lowercase, and it worked. Okay, let's remove this print statement. So next here we want to look, well, okay, if they're not feeling good, maybe the user just types okay. So the next part of the print statement is an elif. If I put if, then that will be starting a new statement. So the second part of this if statement, because it's part of the same statement, is elif. I'll go into this in the next section. So elif feeling is equal to okay, lowercase okay, because I've already converted the user's input to okay. Then I can print something like hope your day goes well. And then lastly, let's do if they're feeling bad. So if feeling bad, then something like print sorry to hear that. Oops, I missed the equal sign, so our feeling is equal to bad. Okay, let's just test these now. So if I run again, then how are you feeling today? We've already done good, so let's do okay. Hope your day goes well, that works. And then lastly, let's try bad. How are you feeling today? Bad, and sorry to hear that. So that's an example of if statements using the comparator of is equal to and comparing it to a string. Now for a quick look at indentation, and indentation meaning the gap that we've left here, which is one tab in. I'll just copy this and put in this section here. Okay, so why have this indent? This indent tells the program that this line of code is inside this if statement. The same for this one and the same for this one. If I put this line back here, for a start we would get an error, and after that it tells the program that this if statement has finished. So if I run this now, we will see we'll get an error. Okay, and there it's highlighted what the error is, so that needs to be indented. When the if statement is finished, if I do a print here, then Python knows that the if statement has finished, so it knows that all this has finished because this is the first line it can see that's not part of the if statement, that is on the same indentation level, meaning it's not indent like the print above. So if I just put finished here, for example, just to give us a printout so we can see what happens. How are you feeling today? Good. And here we can see once it's finished that if statement, it printed this. Okay, so now looking how this works with numbers using the examination grade. So if I just comment this out, and here I'm doing multi-line comments, so everything highlighted in green there, the computer will not read. So for the exam grade, let's say I set up a variable called my grade, called my grade equals input, and please enter your grade. Now, because I'm going to be comparing the grade as a number, I need to take this input as a number. So I need to say this input will be an integer. Now it's a common mistake here to open two brackets and only close one bracket, so just make sure you close two brackets at the end there. Okay, let me just move this up the screen a little bit. So an if statement to take that grade, and in the example at the start we said if it's greater than 90 then an A, greater than 80 then a B, etc. If my grade is greater than or equal to 90, I'll put 90 in brackets, it doesn't have to be, but just to keep it all neat. So if my grade is greater than or equal to 90, then I can print something like you got A. Ooh, you got A. You got A. Okay, and then I can say Aleph, my grade is greater than or equal to 80, then print you got B. And again, if I just copy this, and we'll do this for C. Now, the computer reads down, and if it meets the first case, then it will not do the second case. So obviously, if they get greater than 80, they also got greater than 90. But because they'd already met this case, if they did get more than 90, it won't print you got a B as well. So let's just see if this works so far. So if I run this, please enter your grade. Okay, I should have left a space after grade just to make it neat. We'll do that later. Let's say I get 91. Okay, you got an A. So let's just put a space here to make that neater. And then let's say if they didn't get an A, a B or a C, let's do an else. So else, now else does not have a criteria. So this is if it's anything else. Then let's print, let's say don't. Yeah. So if it doesn't meet this criteria, or this criteria, or this criteria, then we'll do the else. Now the else never has any criteria. It's just if none of the above criteria are met, then do this instead. Okay, let's just run this. And okay, this is looking a bit neater. I will try 80 because 80 is right on the boundary of what's acceptable for a B. So I've put greater than or equal to, so this should print a B, which it does. It says you've got a B. Okay, so when comparing to numbers, just remembering that you need to specifically say that it's going to be an integer, and then you can use different operators. So for example, I could do less than, etc., or I could do just greater than. In this case, I want greater than or equal to. Okay, so lastly, just having a quick look at the structure of if statements. As we have here, all of this is in one if statement. So the if statement reads through. If it meets the first criteria, then it will not do the rest of them. It will simply go to whatever lines of code you have after the if statement. Firstly, can we just have if? Yes, we can. So for example, if I just comment these out again, and then if we just have an if, it will still work with just one if. So if I run this, let's say I do less than 90, so 70, and nothing will happen because the program's finished. It didn't meet the if criteria here. If I run this again, then if I put 95, you can see that this has worked. Okay, if you want, you can have an elif, just an if and then an elif. That is fine. That will also work. So if I get less, it'll go to the alif and it'll say do. What you cannot do is you can't go if, alif, and then else. That will not work. So it always has to follow the same flow. If you're having more criteria, then if, alif, and then else. So this will not work. It will give me an error. Okay, invalid syntax. I often get asked, can you have if? So let's see how this will work. And the answer is you can, but it would be A, unusual, B, it may not work as you expected. So can I have, for example, if, and if in the same statement? Well, one thing is that these are now three separate if statements. So they're not connected to each other. So let's see what happens if I run this now. Let's say I get 95 again, and it will run through all three. So I've got an A, a B, and a C. Because having 95 is also greater than 70, it's greater than 80, and it's greater than 90. So these are all separate if statements. Now in some cases you may not get all three outputs, but the computer will still read all three of them. Whereas in this method, once a criteria is met, the computer will not read the rest of the if statements, which is quite important when your program is big. If the criteria is met, then there's no point in the computer reading the rest of the criteria. It just slows the process down. So looking at a normal if statement, generally speaking, we would expect to see something like this, where you have an if, an alif, and an else. You can have loads of alifs, and you can even put an if statement inside an if statement. But the flow, generally speaking, will go if, alif, and else. I know one of the problems when you're starting to code is getting used to the syntax. Do I need a colon there? Do I need to close the brackets? How can I structure my if statements or loops, etc.? So I've created a cheat sheet, which I will drop the link in the comments, which you can download the cheat sheet for free. I hope you do find these videos useful. Please add any comments. If you want me to produce any more videos, then please just ask, and I'll see you in the next video.